Remembering. It's the moment you stop outsourcing your power and start returning to the truth that lived in your bones long before anyone told you who to be. It's the moment your inner voice becomes louder than the conditioning, the expectations, and the stories you inherited and told yourself. You don't need to become more. You need to remember who you already are. This podcast exists to help you magnetize your depth and dismantle the illusions beneath the roles, the masks, and the survival strategies to find real and sustainable strength. I'm Dalia, and each conversation is an invitation back to your own inner authority, a reminder that your power was never missing, it was waiting. This is the remembering. Let's begin. Welcome back to the remembering. I'm Dalia, and I'm so honored to be here with you again. In our first episode, I shared my story and the path of one of many that brought me home to myself and what brought me to this place and space that you and I are holding here together now. Today, we're ready to take the next step as we begin to look at the versions of ourselves we had to become in order to survive. And we'll begin to play with the idea and many ideas around what happens when those versions of us start to fall away. I said this in the first episode, and I'll say it again. Healing was never about doing more. There will always be a wealth of modalities out there depending on where you come from, where you go, what cultures you're interacting with. But what if the process really was not adding more, but uncreating and making space for you, the real you, the soul you. This is about letting go of roles that you were praised for at times. This is about putting down the masks that protected us. This is about the identities that were never ours to carry, but we began carrying them for the sake of love, connection, community, and all of those I would file under human survival, because without those things, we just don't thrive. And science has shown this across the board. So as you listen today, as I share, as you connect with my story or anything else about this podcast, I invite you to breathe, to soften, and to feel your way to your truth that's asking to be remembered. I don't have the answers, but I am with you in this moment, recognizing, moving, and remembering. So let's begin. As children, and I really had to sit back and kind of go deep with this one because I wanted to go all the way back. I didn't want to just go to the most recent instances. And I emphasize that throughout our process, you'll be able to touch deeply into your past, and some things will be last week. And as long as you're moving through those shifts and changes, how often will rarely matter. So, as children, at some point, we all took a moment and we looked at our parents and we said, huh, who do I need to be in order to have a specific experience? Now, those experiences, the ones we desired, manifested in a multitude of ways. I'd like to go back into my past here and talk about love. You see, my mom was a single parent and she was a Marine, which is like a whole nother side of things. And as I observed her as a young child, all I wanted to do, and this was sort of innate, but all I wanted to do was make her life as easy as possible. Now, make no mistake, I still got in trouble. I was curious about everything. And yet there was something in me that recognized that she was working really hard. I remember times going into work with her, sleeping under her desk as she completed whatever it is that she needed to do. I remember being at babysitters and being the last person to be picked up. And I never saw that, at least on a conscious level, and perhaps another thing for me to remember, but I never saw that as being forgotten. I never saw that as being forgotten. I saw that as my mom doing everything in her power to make a home and a space and a place for us. And it was up to me to take care of what I could take care of, which was myself. And in that recognition of her working really hard, I began to associate behaving with love. And so, as beautiful as that sounds, something in me went quiet. Not because of punishments, not because of something that she said or did, but it felt like just the best response. As a kid, I couldn't have conceived of the ripple effect because it wasn't just my voice that went quiet. There were other things that began to become subdued. Other stories began to materialize from that moment, from me saying, okay, I'm going to behave myself. I'm not going to cause a problem. I'm not going to add weight to my mother's life. But where in there is presence? My presence, your presence carries weight, a very natural, potent, powerful, and beautiful weight. And if we start to think that any aspect of that is not valuable or is causing harm to others, rather than looking at is it balanced or imbalanced, and as a kid, who would do that? We start to shapeshift. We start to collapse into an idea of safety rather than real safety. So for me, as I began to lean into the stories, behave, be good, I started to fulfill a very large question for myself. Who do I need to be in order to receive love? Now, I know I'm not the only one who's asked that question. And I'm certainly in this moment not asking you or expecting you to believe that a child had the cognitive ability to process an existential question like that. What I am doing is I'm inviting you to pause. And as you pause, I'm asking you to ask what that question feels like. Again, the question being, what do I need to do or who do I need to be in order to receive love? Feel that question as it moves into your ears and into your body. Notice how it feels, whatever comes up. and trace that feeling back in time to the first moment that you felt it. Your body has wisdom, it will know. Just ask the question. Do you remember when that question came online for you? I'd like to point out that there's harm in that question, even though that question can be produced from a place of love, from a place of desired connection, for the desire of ease in another person's life that you can create. The harm assumes and comes from the assumption that you, as you are, as you simply exist, cannot just receive love. There has to be something outside of you. There has to be a reason. And then when you connect with that, there's potential for parents, loved ones, friends to go on and improve your, I shouldn't say improve, I should say refine in a negative way that way of being for you, that connection to that question. What ends up happening is that question begins to shape your focus. And because it shapes your focus, it then goes on to shape how you see the world and the decisions that you commit to navigate what you're seeing. Have you ever considered how that question or questions like it doesn't have to be love, it doesn't have to be based in that. It could be based in something entirely different. But have you ever considered how that question or any question like it has quieted your soul's laughter, its brightness, its joy, and quieted it down to the whisper that exists in the background of your life as you start to grow and age and question, what am I doing right now? When you wake up one day and you look around and you realize that you've been living in a loop, that some of the habits and things that you're connected to are echoes of who you were, but something else is begging to come online and maybe has been for decades, but you're just now hearing it. In that space of waking up, you might start to reach for things that feel like they qualify who you are. You might start pulling on people in your life to give you things that they're not capable of giving you. And then, if that's happening, maybe it's a business that you built that you start to realize is far removed from what you began to create in the first place, what you created for your path. And if that's the case, you can then start to look at all of the hats and all of the roles that you started to play. Some of us become bosses, and there is nothing and no one that can shake us. But where's your vulnerability? Where's the strength in that? Some of us become caregivers and caretakers, and where in there are you caring for and taking care of yourself? Some of us become the strong one, the strong friend, the strong family member. Everybody comes to us. And then when we stop and we pause, we look around and we realize there's no strong person for us to turn to. Maybe this whole time you've been trying to behave and you've created a concept or a narrative around behaving that doesn't make sense. This is where things become unsustainable. This is where, as you travel along your healing journey, I have heard people say, I'm just beginning my healing journey and I want to try this. Whatever it is that you enter into, ask yourself, are you seeking satiation and trying to remain as you are? Or do you want something long term? I know these questions sound obvious, but they're obvious for a reason because if we don't ask them, we end up in the healing loop as if healing was Tylenol to take. And it's not. Real healing has lasting effects longer than weeks or months, but years at a time until the next cycle comes through. Life is cycles. And so, what if instead of leaning into those Tylenol moments that are really and truly continuing to perpetuate the unsustainability of your life, what if little by little you started to break down the structures that each of your identities created? At work, you're the perky, poppy one that's quippy and always makes the jokes. Do you want to stay that way? Do you want to be taken seriously? Or do you want to be able to speak from a different place? Perhaps you don't want to be the funny one anymore. Perhaps you'd like to be seen as the intellectual. Perhaps you're the intellectual who would like to be seen as funny. Whatever's there for you, whatever is there for you, you might have to break some things down. You might have to speak up in the meeting instead of building the wall of humor around you in the meeting. So let's take it down and uncreate that wall brick by brick. Perhaps it's time for you to step away from family members who don't take your gifts and abilities seriously and towards the public who has been in agony waiting to hear from you, waiting to see your light and experience your vision for the world. I understand the complexities of uncreation and trust and believe as you start the process, it will feel unsafe. So much of who we think we are was built just to stay safe. I want to share with you the roles and identities that you've played are not you. Healing was not meant to keep and lock those identities into place. It was meant to dismantle that so that you could get back to who you came into this world to be, who your soul has been calling forward. The emptiness that you feel is not because something else needs to be poured in. It's because the connection to that joy, that brightness, turned into a whisper. And that whisper is now trying to scream, and you can hear it in the echoes of the hollowness. And it shakes you as you look around and feel a dissonance, a distance with what you've built. So, what if we stopped playing those roles? What if we took off those hats? What if we peeled back the layers? What if we uncreated the physical structures that held us in place, asking us to play those roles over and over and over again until now? As part of our space and time in this portal that we've created and continue to create, I want to offer a question or two. You might journal these and see where they take you. If you're not a journaler, and I know some of us out there are not, perhaps you record yourself asking yourself the question and answering it, only to listen to it later. But here's the question. Where do I shrink? Here's the question. Where do I shrink, perform, or disappear in order to belong? What parts of me were useful at one time, but now feel like cages? Take a moment to breathe those questions in as you ask them of yourself. Allow that breath to wake something up inside of you in order to release the questions from within. I want to put forward an idea, a notion here. I believe I did it in the last podcast episode, but if I didn't, we're doing it now. You are perfect. And anything that feels imperfect perhaps is out of balance. Even the parts of you that once felt useful, what if we called them into balance? Would the cage begin to dismantle itself and reveal the truth of a gift that's been misused in order to build those cages? As you explore these questions, I invite you to not only witness yourself, but if you have the safety, if you have the community, or if you would like to share with me and allow me to witness you, please share, open up, allow yourself to see and feel that you're not the only one, and how normal it is to build cages. And then together, let's normalize breaking those cages down and creating our own sense of belonging. Here we are at the end of our time together. I want to thank you for giving me such a precious gift of your time. And I just want to land some truths here. You were never wrong for wanting to survive. Every animal does it, including the human being. And this is an invitation and a reminder as you begin to remember yourself that you don't have to stay shaped by the wounds that you've carried. It's time to integrate them. It's time to pull them inward rather than having them as an identity. In this space and in this community, I will tell you again, with absolute love and connection in this moment, we don't fix, we uncreate. And through that process, we remember. Thank you for joining me. I love you. I'll catch you next time. You're not broken, you're remembering. And thank you for remembering with us and with me.